They tell you that time heals all wounds, but that is a lie. Time just covers them with dust. You think you can bury the past, don't you? You think if you pack it away in a velvet-lined box and shove it deep into a vault in the Swiss Alps that it stays there. I thought so too. I built a whole new life on top of that silence. I planted olive trees. I learned to press oil. I learned to sleep at night without a gun under my pillow. But the thing about the past is that it is a rot. It eats through steel and concrete and time. And when it finally crawls back out of the ground, it doesn't just want to be heard. It wants to scream. My name is Magdalena Rossi. And for 40 years, I cleaned up the messes of the most powerful people in California. I thought I was retired. But today I realized that the devil never really lets you hand in your notice. The Santa Barbara sun was hot enough to bake the regret right out of your bones. That is what I told myself anyway, as I stood knee-deep in the rows of my olive grove. The air smelled of sage and dry earth and the sharp green scent of cut branches. I held the pruning shears in my gloved hand and felt the satisfying resistance of the wood before the snap. It was a clean sound, honest work. For the last 5 years, this had been my life. I was no longer Magdalena the fixer, or Magdalena the ghost, or Magdalena the woman who knew where the bodies were buried. I was just the old woman who made the best cold-pressed oil in the county. I wiped the sweat from my forehead with the back of my wrist and looked out over the valley. The Pacific Ocean was a ribbon of blue steel in the distance. It was quiet. It was perfect. And then I heard the sound that ruins everything. It wasn't a scream or a siren. It was the low electronic hum of a luxury car creeping up my gravel driveway. I didn't move. I didn't run. I just stood there with my shears in my hand and watched as the black sedan rounded the bend. It moved like a shark through shallow water, silent and expensive and dangerous. I knew that car. I didn't know the license plate, but I knew the arrogance of the driving. It stopped 10 yards from where I stood. The dust settled around the tires in a slow, lazy cloud. For a moment, nothing happened. The tinted windows reflected the sun back at me like a shield. I could have turned around and walked back into the main house. I could have called the sheriff. I could have called my dogs. But I didn't do any of those things because I knew it wouldn't matter. The past had found my address. The driver's door opened and a shoe made of Italian leather hit the dirt. Then the suit, navy blue and tailored to within an inch of its life. And finally, the face. Elias Thorne. He looked older than the last time I saw him. The boyish charm I had once found so endearing had hardened into something brittle and sharp. His hair was grayer, but his eyes were exactly the same. They were the color of a frozen lake and just as empty. He adjusted his cufflinks and looked around the grove with a smirk that made my stomach turn. "Nice place, Magdalena," he said, and his voice was smooth like oil on water. "Very rustic. I didn't know you had a green thumb." I tightened my grip on the shears. I said, "Elias, you are trespassing." He laughed. It was a short, dry sound. "I don't think you can trespass on property bought with blood money," he said. "But let us not argue about real estate. You look good. Retirement suits you. You look softer." "I am not soft," I said. "I am just patient." "What do you want, Elias?" He began to walk toward me. He moved with the confidence of a man who has never been told no. He stopped just outside of striking distance. He was smart. I taught him that. "I want to talk about Zurich," he said. The word hung in the hot air between us. Zurich. It was a word I hadn't spoken aloud in 20 years. It was the name of a city, but for us, it was shorthand for the end of the world. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. I haven't been to Europe in a decade. Elias sighed and looked at his manicured nails. Don't insult me, Magdalena. I was your best student, remember? I know about the box, I know about the bank on the Bahnhofstrasse, and I know about the ledger inside it, the Rossi Ledger. I kept my face perfectly still. It was a skill I mastered in the 80s when I was staring down cartel bosses and corrupt senators. Inside my chest, my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, but outside, I was a statue. That is a fairy tale, I said. A myth. There is no ledger. Elias shook his head slowly. You always were a terrible liar when it came to your own survival. You lie beautifully for others, but for yourself, you are clumsy. I know it exists because I have a buyer. A very wealthy buyer who is very interested in the history of the California political machine in the 90s. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to sell old gossip? I said. You came all this way to ask me for a book of old gossip. It is not gossip, he said, and his voice dropped an octave. It is leverage. It is power. It is the roadmap to every skeleton in every closet from San Diego to Sacramento. And I want the key code, Magdalena. I stepped forward and pointed the tip of my shears at his chest. Get off my land, Elias, before I forget that I am a pacifist. He didn't flinch. He just smiled that shark smile again. I thought you might say that. That is why I didn't come alone. I looked at the car. The passenger windows were dark. Who is in the car, Elias? I asked. Oh, nobody important, he said. Just a representative from the bank. But that is not my real leverage. My real leverage is currently in Las Vegas. My blood ran cold. Las Vegas. Hugo. My son, Hugo, was 40 years old, but he had the impulse control of a teenager. He was a sweet boy with a good heart and a terrible addiction to games of chance. I had bailed him out more times than I could count. I had paid his debts. I had threatened his bookies. I had set him up in a safe, boring job. But Vegas always called him back. What have you done? I whispered. I haven't done anything, Elias said, and he opened his arms wide like a priest. I am just a concerned friend. I heard Hugo got himself into a bit of a situation at the Bellagio. Something about a marker he couldn't cover. A rather large marker. The kind of debt that people don't collect with lawsuits. They collect it with baseball bats. You are lying, I said. Hugo is in rehab in Arizona. Check your phone, Magdalena, Elias said. I pulled my phone from the pocket of my gardening apron. My hands were trembling. I hated him for making me tremble. I unlocked the screen and saw 3 missed messages. They were from Hugo. Mom, I am sorry. Mom, please pick up. Mom, they say they know you. The phone slipped from my fingers and landed in the dirt. I looked up at Elias, and for the first time in years, I felt the red-hot heat of pure rage. If you touch him, I said. If you hurt one hair on his head, I will burn your world down. Elias tutted and shook his finger at me. Tisk, Magdalena. Such violence. I don't want to hurt Hugo. I like Hugo. He is charming. But my partners are less patient. They want their money. Or they want something of equal value, like a code to a box in Zurich. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. He flicked it at me, and it landed on the ground next to my phone. You have 24 hours, he said. Think about it. A dusty old book for your son's kneecaps. Seems like a fair trade to me. He turned and walked back to the car. He didn't look back. He got in, and the engine hummed to life. I watched as the black sedan reversed and drove away, leaving a cloud of dust that settled on my olive trees. I stood there for a long time. The sun was still shining. The ocean was still blue. The birds were still singing. But the peace was gone. My sanctuary had been breached. I bent down and picked up my phone. I dialed Hugo's number, but it went straight to voicemail. I looked at the business card in the dirt. It was black with gold lettering. Just a phone number. No name. I picked up the shears. I looked at the olive tree in front of me. It was an ancient tree with gnarled bark and deep roots. It had survived droughts and fires and storms. I am not that tree. I walked back to the house. I took off my gloves and threw them on the table. I went to the hall closet and moved the winter coats aside. I reached up to the top shelf and pulled down a heavy wooden box. I opened it. Inside, wrapped in an oilcloth, was a burner phone and a passport with a name that wasn't mine. I thought I was done. I thought I was out. But Elias Thorne had made a mistake. He thought he was cornering a helpless old grandmother. He forgot that before I was a grandmother, I was a wolf. He wants the ledger. Fine, I will go to Zurich, but I am not going there to give him the code. I am going there to get my weapon. I dialed the number on the burner phone. It rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. Yeah. Desmond, I said. It is me. Don't ask questions. Just pack a bag. We are going to Switzerland. There was a pause on the other end, then a low chuckle. I was wondering when you would get bored of the gardening, Magdalena. I will meet you at the airport in an hour. I hung up the phone. I looked out the window at my beautiful, peaceful grove. Let it burn, I whispered. Zurich does not smell like a city. It smells like old money and cold rain. It is a place where silence is a currency and discretion is the only religion that matters. When I stepped off the plane at Cloton Airport, the damp chill hit me like a slap in the face. It was a violent shift from the warm, golden light of Santa Barbara. My body was still on California time, but my mind had already snapped back into the cold, hard rhythm of my past. Desmond walked beside me. He was wearing a trench coat that had seen better days and carrying a duffel bag that looked like it contained dirty laundry rather than high-tech surveillance gear. Desmond Pierce was 70 years old, but he moved with the steady rolling gait of a man who had spent 40 years chasing stories into war zones. He was an investigative journalist back when that title meant something other than scrolling through Twitter. He had tried to expose me for a decade, and then somewhere along the line, we realized we were the only 2 people left who understood how the game was really played. So we stopped fighting each other and started fighting everyone else. He looked at me as we waited for our bags. You are tight, he said. You are holding your breath, Magdalena. I am not holding my breath, I said. I am thinking. Don't think too much, he said. It makes you hesitate. We go to the bank. We get the book. We trade the book for the boy. Simple. Nothing with Elias is simple, I said. He was my student, Desmond. He knows how I think. He knows I would come here. That is the point, Desmond said. He expects you to play the game. So we play the game until we can flip the board. We took a taxi into the city. The streets were gray and clean and efficient. We drove past the lake, which looked like a sheet of hammered lead under the overcast sky. I watched the swans drifting near the shore, and I wondered if Hugo was looking at the sky right now. I wondered if he was in a cell or a hotel room. I wondered if he was afraid. The thought made my hands curl into fists in my lap. Guilt is a useless emotion, I always told my clients. Guilt is just vanity in disguise, but telling yourself that and feeling it are 2 different things. The bank was on the Bahnhofstrasse. It was a fortress of limestone and brass disguised as a polite office building. I hadn't walked through these doors in 20 years. The last time I was here, I was 48 years old, and I was terrified. I had just stolen the ledger from a safe in a burning mansion in Malibu, and I knew that if I didn't hide it, I would be dead within a week. Now I was walking back in to dig up that old corpse. I told Desmond to wait in the lobby. He grumbled, but he sat down in a leather armchair and pretended to read a financial newspaper. I knew he was actually scanning the room, counting the cameras and the security guards. I approached the reception desk. The woman behind the marble counter looked like she had been carved out of ice. She didn't smile. "I need to access my safety deposit box," I said. "Number 404. "Name?" she asked without looking up. "Elena Vance," I said. It was the alias I had used to open the account. It felt strange on my tongue, like wearing a pair of shoes that didn't fit anymore. The woman typed something into her computer. She paused. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine. Then she picked up a phone and spoke in hushed German. A moment later, a man in a pinstripe suit appeared from a side door. He was short and round, and he was sweating. "Frau Vance," he said, "we were not expecting you." "I didn't know I needed an appointment to see my own property," I said. "Of course not," he said. "Please, follow me." He led me down a corridor lined with oil paintings of serious-looking men with mutton chop whiskers. We took an elevator down 2 floors. The air got cooler and the silence got heavier. We stepped out into the vault antechamber. It was a room of steel and chrome. The manager stood by the heavy circular door. "Box 404, he said. "Do you have your key?" I reached into my purse and pulled out the heavy iron key I had kept sewn into the lining of my favorite handbag for 2 decades. "I have it," I said. He nodded and used his own master key to unlock the first mechanism. Then he stepped back. "Private viewing?" he asked. "Please," I said. He gestured to a small private room off to the side. I walked over to the wall of boxes. Number 404 was at eye level. I inserted my key. It turned with a smooth, well-oiled click. I pulled the long metal drawer out of the wall. It felt light. My stomach dropped. It felt wrong. It felt empty. I carried the box into the private viewing room and set it on the table. My hands were shaking again. I took a deep breath. I told myself to be calm. Maybe the book was just lighter than I remembered. Maybe my memory was playing tricks on me. I lifted the lid. The box was empty. No, not empty. In the center of the velvet lining, there was a single sheet of paper. I stared at it. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The ledger was gone. The list of bribes and murders and cover-ups that I had risked my life to protect was gone. I reached out and picked up the piece of paper. It was heavy, expensive stationery, cream-colored. On it was a typed note. "Thank you for confirming the location, Magdalena. I wasn't sure if the old rumors were true, but watching you run halfway across the world told me everything I needed to know. Don't worry about Hugo. He is fine. We are just getting started." I dropped the paper. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. He didn't need the code. He never needed the code. He already had the book. How? My mind raced. How did he get it? You need the physical key. You need the fingerprint. You need Hugo. The realization hit me so hard, I had to grab the edge of the table to keep from falling. Hugo had been to Europe last year. He said he was going skiing in Zermatt. He had asked to borrow my old luggage. The luggage where I kept the key sewn into the lining. Hugo didn't just sell me out to pay a debt. He had physically come here. He had stolen the key. He had emptied the box. He had given it to Elias months ago. The visit to the olive grove. The threat. It was all theater. Elias was just pulling the strings to see if I would dance. He wanted to see if I still had fight in me. He wanted to see if the ledger was actually important enough for me to leave my sanctuary. I had walked right into his trap. I slammed the lid of the empty box shut. The sound echoed in the small room like a gunshot. I walked out of the viewing room. The manager was waiting. "Is everything in order, Frau Vance?" he asked. I looked at him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him by his silk tie and demand to know who had been here before me. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Hugo would have forged the papers. He was good at forgery. I taught him that too. "Everything is fine," I said. My voice sounded hollow and distant. I walked back to the elevator. I rode up to the lobby. I walked over to Desmond. He looked at my face, and he stood up immediately. He grabbed my arm. "Magdalena," he said. "What is it? Where is the book?" I looked at him, and I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was hot and angry. "There is no book," I whispered. "He already has it, Desmond. He has had it for months. Hugo gave it to him." Desmond's face went pale. "Oh, hell," he said. We walked out of the bank and into the gray afternoon. The rain had started to fall harder. People were rushing past us with umbrellas, heads down against the wind. I stood on the sidewalk and felt completely exposed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a video message. From an unknown number. I pressed play. The video was shaky at first, then it settled. It showed a room. A luxury hotel room. In the chair sat Hugo. He looked tired. He had a bruise on his cheek, but he wasn't tied up. He was holding a glass of scotch. He looked at the camera. "Hi, Mom," he said. His voice was thick. "I know you are probably in Zurich right now. I am sorry. I didn't have a choice. I owed them so much money, Mom. You don't understand. They were going to kill me. Elias said if I gave him the old book, he would wipe the slate clean. I didn't think it mattered anymore. It's just old history, right? Who cares about what happened in 1995? The camera panned to the side. Elias walked into the frame. He smiled. "Hello, Magdalena," he said. "I hope the flight was comfortable. I just wanted you to see that Hugo is safe. He is a guest of the Four Seasons here in San Francisco. We are having a drink and catching up." He leaned into the camera lens until his face filled the screen. "I lied about the auction, Magdalena. I am not going to sell the secrets. That is thinking too small. I am going to use them. Tonight the first story drops. Remember Senator Davidson? The one with the offshore accounts you helped hide? I think it is time the voters knew the truth." He paused. "You should fly back, Magdalena. The show is about to start, and you have a front row seat." The screen went black. I stood there in the rain holding the phone. I felt cold, colder than I had ever felt in my life. Desmond looked at me. What did he say? "He is going to release it," I said. "He is going to burn it all down. He is starting with Davidson." Desmond swore softly. "Davidson is the tip of the iceberg, Magdalena. If he releases the whole ledger, half of Washington goes to jail, and the other half goes to the morgue, and they will all know it came from you." "I know," I said. "We are targets now," Desmond said. "We are liabilities." I looked up at the gray sky. I thought about my olive trees. I thought about the peace I had fought so hard for. It was gone. It was ash. I turned to Desmond. Get us a flight back, I said. To Santa Barbara, he asked. No, I said. To Los Angeles. If he wants to start a war, then I am going to bring the war to him. But we have nothing, Magdalena Desmond said. We have no leverage. The book is gone. I looked at my reflection in the bank window. I looked old. I looked tired. But beneath the wrinkles, I saw the eyes of the woman who had survived the cartels and the mob and the Hollywood studios. We don't need the book, I said. Desmond looked confused. Then what do we have? I buttoned my coat and turned up the collar against the wind. We have his arrogance, I said. He thinks he has won. He thinks I am just a scared old woman running errands for him. He has forgotten the most important rule of the game. Which is? Desmond asked. Never leave your enemy alive, I said. I started walking toward the taxi stand. Come on, Desmond, we have work to do. Los Angeles is a city that loves a car crash. It doesn't matter if it is metal and glass on the 405 or a reputation imploding on the 6 o'clock news. People slow down to watch. They want to see the blood. When Desmond and I landed at LAX, the air in the terminal felt electric. You could feel it. Everyone was looking at their phones. Everyone was whispering. The collective attention of the city had snapped toward a single point of impact, and I knew with a sinking feeling in my gut that I was the one who had provided the ammunition. We picked up a rental car, a nondescript gray sedan that smelled of synthetic lemon and stale cigarettes. Desmond drove. I sat in the passenger seat and opened the news app on my burner phone. The headline was in bold black letters. Senator Davidson implicated in 90s offshore fraud ring. I tapped the article. It was brutal. It was efficient. It detailed exact dates and account numbers in the Cayman Islands. It listed the shell companies. It even had scans of the original wire transfers with Davidson's signature. I recognized those documents. I had held the originals in my hands 25 years ago. I had been the one to create the shell companies. I was the one who told Davidson that his secret was safe as long as I was breathing. He is dead, I said quietly. Desmond glanced over at me as he merged onto the highway. Davidson is dead, he asked. Politically dead, I said. This story is only an hour old, and already the DOJ has announced an inquiry. His stock is tanking. His wife will leave him by morning. Elias didn't just leak a rumor, Desmond. He released the primary source documents. He is using the ledger as a demolition hammer. Desmond gripped the steering wheel tighter. Why Davidson? He asked. Why start with him? He is retired. He is harmless. That is the question, I said. Elias doesn't do random. He is an engineer. Every move has a function. If he is burning Davidson, it is because the smoke covers something else. We couldn't go to my house in Santa Barbara. Elias knew where I lived. We couldn't go to a hotel because digital trails are how men like Elias hunt. So we went to the only place in Los Angeles that refuses to acknowledge the passing of time. Penny's Diner on Wilshire hasn't changed the grease in the fryer since 1982. The vinyl booths are cracked and the coffee tastes like battery acid, but it has no Wi-Fi, and the owner is a woman who owes me 3 distinct favors. We slid into a booth in the back corner. The neon sign outside buzzed with a rhythmic flickering sound that felt like a countdown. I ordered black coffee. Desmond ordered a slice of cherry pie he had no intention of eating. We need to think like him, I said. I pulled a napkin from the dispenser and flattened it on the table. I took a pen from my purse. I wrote Davidson in the center. Okay, I said. What does destroying Davidson achieve? It creates chaos in the moderate wing of the party. It drops the value of the renewable energy sector because Davidson sits on 3 boards. Desmond looked at the napkin. Renewable energy, he said. That is interesting. Why is it interesting? I asked. Desmond pulled out his tablet. He kept it offline, but he had downloaded a cache of market data before we left Zurich. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a graph. 3 days ago, there was a massive short position taken against green tech industries. It is a huge bet. Everyone thought the trader was crazy because green tech has been stable for years. I looked at the graph. "Who took the position?" I asked. "A shell company based in Singapore," Desmond said. "But look at the timing. They shorted the stock 48 hours before the Davidson story broke. Now that Davidson is ruined, green tech is plummeting because he was their main lobbyist. That shell company just made $50 million in an hour." I felt a chill go down my spine. It wasn't just revenge. It wasn't just chaos. "It is a heist," I whispered. "Elias isn't trying to change the world," I said. "He is robbing it. He is using the secrets in my ledger to manipulate the stock market. He picks a target. He shorts the stock. He releases the scandal. He collects the profit." "It is brilliant," Desmond admitted. "It is evil, but it is brilliant. He has turning insider trading into a science. And he has the ultimate cheat sheet," I said. "The Rossi Ledger has enough dirt to crash the tech sector, the housing market, and the pharmaceutical industry. If he keeps this up, he will be a billionaire by Friday, and the economy will be in ruins." "We have to stop the next leak," Desmond said. "Who is next?" I closed my eyes and tried to visualize the pages of the book I had burned into my memory. The ledger was organized chronologically, but Elias wouldn't release it that way. He would release it based on market volatility. I opened my eyes. "Pharma," I said. "Why pharma?" Desmond asked. "Because in 1998, I helped the CEO of Ethelgard Pharmaceuticals cover up a failed clinical trial that killed 12 people. It was one of the worst things I ever did. I buried the autopsies. I paid off the families. If that comes out, the company is finished." Desmond tapped on his tablet. "Let me check the markets," he said. He scrolled for a moment, and then his face went grim. "You are right," he said. "There is a spike in put options against Ethelgard. Massive volume. It started this morning." "When does the market close?" I asked. 4 o'clock, Desmond said. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 2:30. "He will dump the data right before the bell," I said, "to maximize the panic. We have 90 minutes to do what Desmond asked. We can't stop the internet at Magdalena." "No," I said. "We can't stop the leak, but maybe we can poison the well." I pulled my burner phone back out. "I need you to find me the number for Ethelgard's head of security. His name is Gorman. He is an ex-Navy SEAL with a very short temper." "You are going to warn them?" Desmond asked. "I am going to do more than warn them," I said. "I am going to offer them a head start. Elias thinks he is the predator here. He thinks he is watching us through a screen. But he is about to learn that when you hunt big game, you don't just look at the target. You have to watch the tall grass." I dialed the number Desmond found. It rang twice. "Who is this?" a voice barked. "Hello, Gorman," I said. "This is Magdalena Rossi. Don't hang up. You are about to lose your pension, your stock options, and probably your freedom. But if you listen to me very carefully, I might be able to help you save one of them." There was silence on the line, then a heavy sigh. "I thought you were dead, Magdalena." "Not yet," I said. "But the day is young. Now listen to me. A man named Elias Thorne is about to release the 98 trial data." I heard the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. "How do you know that?" Gorman asked. "Because he stole my book," I said. "But here's the thing, Gorman. He is doing it for profit. He is shorting your stock, which means he has a digital footprint." "What do you want me to do?" Gorman asked. "I want you to trace the trade," I said. "You have the NSA-level software. Trace the trade back to the source. Find me the IP address. Find me the server. Find me the man. And if I do..." Gorman asked, Then I will come and finish what I started 20 years ago, I said. I will clean up the mess. I hung up the phone. I looked at Desmond. He looked at me with a mixture of admiration and fear. You are playing a dangerous game, Magdalena, he said. You are inciting a war between a tech genius and a pharmaceutical hit squad. I took a sip of the terrible coffee. It was hot and bitter, and it made me feel alive. I am not inciting a war. Desmond, I said, I am just introducing the lions to the hyenas. Let them fight. We will be waiting in the shadows to pick up the pieces. Now eat your pie. We have to go to Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is not a place. It is a hallucination. It is a 50-mile stretch of glass and concrete where 20-year-olds in hoodies play God with the fabric of reality. We drove north on the 101 past the sprawling campuses of tech giants that had more money than most small countries. The sun was setting, and the sky was a bruised purple color. The air outside the car smelled of eucalyptus and ozone, but inside it smelled of tension. Desmond had his tablet balanced on his knees. He was typing furiously. His face was illuminated by the blue glow of the screen, and it made him look like a ghost. Gorman came through, he said, without looking up. I kept my eyes on the road. The traffic was thick. A river of red taillights flowing toward San Francisco. Did he find the source, I asked? He found a relay point, Desmond said. The trade against Ethelgard originated from a server farm in Palo Alto, a company called Chimera Analytics. Chimera, I said. The monster with 3 heads. That sounds like Elias. It is a shell company, Desmond said, registered in Delaware. No employees, no board of directors, just a lease on a server room in an industrial park off University Avenue. I took the exit ramp. The tires screeched slightly on the asphalt. We found the industrial park easily enough. It was a soulless collection of gray boxes surrounded by manicured lawns that looked like they had been painted green. The parking lot was empty. There were no security guards, no gates, just silence and the low hum of electricity. We parked around the back. I reached into my purse and pulled out my lockpick set. It was an old set, German steel. I had owned it since the 80s. Some things technology cannot improve upon. The back door was locked, but it was a standard commercial deadbolt. I had it open in 30 seconds. We slipped inside. The air conditioning hit us instantly. It was freezing. The room was dark except for the blinking lights of the server racks, rows and rows of black towers humming in the darkness. It sounded like a hive of angry bees. Desmond walked over to a terminal in the corner. He pulled a cable from his bag and plugged his tablet directly into the mainframe. He typed a few commands, and then he stopped. He let out a long, slow breath. Magdalena, come look at this. I walked over and looked at the screen. I didn't understand the code. It was just cascading waterfalls of green text. But I understood the image in the center of the screen. It was a scan of a handwritten page. My handwriting. It was page 42 of the Rossi Ledger. The entry about the senator. He scanned the whole book, I whispered. He digitized it. It is worse than that, Desmond said. Look at the process log. He didn't just scan it. He fed it into a language model, an AI. He tapped the screen and a new window opened. It showed a complex web of lines and nodes connecting names and dates and companies. It was pulsing. It looked alive. He built an algorithm, Magdalena. He is feeding the secrets into a predictive engine. The AI analyzes the data in the ledger. It calculates the psychological impact of each secret. It predicts exactly how much the stock will drop. It drafts the press releases. It creates the fake social media accounts to spread the rumor. It executes the short sale. And it does all of it in milliseconds. I stared at the pulsing web. It was terrifying. My life's work. The secrets I had guarded with blood and silence. They were just data points now. Fuel for a machine. It is automated, I said. Yes, Desmond said. Elias isn't pushing the buttons. He just wound up the clock and walked away. The machine is picking the targets. Can we shut it down? I asked. Can we pull the plug? Desmond shook his head. It is decentralized. This is just a node. The core program is in the cloud. If we destroy these servers, the AI will just migrate to another server farm in Tokyo, or London, or Iceland. It is a hydra. You cut off one head, and 2 more grow back. Then we have to find the man holding the leash, I said. We have to find Elias. Desmond was scrolling through the system logs. Wait, he said. There is a calendar entry. A scheduled override. What is it, I asked. The algorithm is set to execute a massive dump tomorrow night, Desmond said. A synchronized release of 10 major scandals at once. It calls it the cleansing. Tomorrow night, I said. That is New Year's Eve. Desmond tapped a few more keys. And look at the location tag for the override command. It is not coming from the cloud. It is coming from a local device. A secure biometric key. Where, I asked. Desmond pointed to a geolocation pin on the map. It was hovering over the hills of Los Angeles. The Getty Center, he said. I smiled. It was a cold, hard smile. Of course, I said. The Getty. He is hosting the New Year's Eve gala for the Tech Alliance. I saw the announcement in the news. He is going to be there, Desmond said, in a tuxedo drinking champagne while his machine destroys the world. And he will have the key on him, I said. He needs it to authorize the final dump. He is too arrogant to let the machine have total control. He wants to be the one to push the button. Desmond unplugged his tablet. The screen on the terminal went dark. So we are crashing a party, Desmond asked. I turned and walked toward the door. The cold air of the server room was starting to seep into my bones. Not just a party, I said. A coronation. Elias thinks he is being crowned king of the new world. I think it is time we showed him that the old world still has teeth. Do we have invitations? Desmond asked as we stepped back out into the night air. I opened the car door and looked back at the gray building. We don't need invitations, Desmond. We are the entertainment. We got back in the car. I checked my phone. There was no word from Hugo. No new demands. Elias was silent. He was confident. He thought he had already won. I started the engine. The gray sedan purred to life. We need clothes, I said. If we are going to the Getty, we need to look the part. Desmond looked down at his rumpled trench coat. I suppose my war correspondent chic won't cut it? I laughed. It was the first time I had laughed in 2 days. No, Desmond. Tomorrow night, you are not a journalist. You are a tycoon. And I am not a retired grandmother. Who are you then? He asked. I put the car in gear and pulled out of the parking lot. The headlights cut through the darkness. I am the consequences, I said. There is a specific kind of silence that exists inside a limousine moving through the hills of Bel Air. It is not a peaceful silence. It is the silence of a shark tank before feeding time. I sat in the back of the rented town car, smoothing the fabric of my dress. It was vintage Valentino. Midnight blue velvet with a neckline that plunged just enough to suggest I had secrets, but high enough to command respect. I wore a diamond choker that was paste, but looked real enough to fool anyone who hadn't brought a jeweler's loop to a cocktail party. Next to me, Desmond looked uncomfortable in a tuxedo that fit him perfectly. He was tugging at his collar like a dog on a leash. Stop fidgeting, I said. You look handsome. I feel like a penguin, he grumbled. A penguin about to walk into a den of polar bears. Are you sure this tech works? I looked down at the small beaded clutch in my lap. Inside, hidden beneath a tube of lipstick and a compact mirror, was a high-powered RFID cloner. It was military-grade hardware that Desmond had acquired from a contact in Koreatown that morning. It works, I said. I just have to get close to him, within 6 inches, and I have to stay there for 60 seconds. 60 seconds is a long time when you are standing next to the man who kidnapped your son, Desmond said. I won't be standing, I said. I will be dancing. The car stopped at the base of the Getty Center. The tram ride up the hill was a surreal ascent into the clouds. The city of Los Angeles sprawled out below us, a grid of golden light stretching to the ocean. It looked beautiful from up here, clean, orderly. It was hard to believe that down there in the dark, stocks were crashing and careers were ending because of a machine that the man at the top of this hill had built. We stepped off the tram and into the courtyard. The air was crisp and smelled of jasmine and expensive cologne. The white travertine stones of the museum glowed in the moonlight. It was a gathering of the gods. The titans of Silicon Valley were there. The venture capitalists, the politicians, the people who owned the algorithms that decided what you bought and who you voted for and what you feared. We walked through the crowd. I held my head high. I made eye contact with no one. That is the trick to crashing a party. If you look like you belong, people assume you do. If you look like you are searching for permission, they will call security. I spotted him immediately. Elias was standing near the fountain holding a flute of champagne. He was wearing a white dinner jacket. He looked like something out of an old movie, a dashing villain from a time when villains had style. He was surrounded by a group of young men in black t-shirts and blazers. They were hanging on his every word. He was their prophet. Desmond touched my elbow. He sees you. I didn't look. I kept walking. Let him come to me, I whispered. We made our way to the bar. I ordered a sparkling water with a twist of lime. I turned and leaned against the marble counter. Elias had broken away from his admirers. He was walking toward us. He didn't look angry. He looked delighted. Magdalena, he called out. His voice carried over the sound of the string quartet playing a polite version of a Nirvana song. He stopped in front of me and bowed slightly. I must say, I am impressed, he said. I expected you to be on a plane back to Santa Barbara, or maybe cowering in a motel room. But here you are, at the Lion's Den, and looking spectacular. I took a sip of my water. I don't cower, Elias. You know that. And I thought I should come and congratulate you. It is a big night. He smiled. It is indeed. The dawn of a new era. Have you met my friends? He gestured to the room. I have met them, I said. I used to clean up their messes. Elias laughed. Touché. But tonight isn't about messes. It is about clarity. Total transparency. Is that what you call it? I asked. I call it theft. Call it what you want, he said. The market calls it a correction. The music changed. The quartet began to play a waltz. It was slow and melancholic. Dance with me, Elias said. He held out his hand. I looked at his hand. It was the hand that had held a gun to my son's head, metaphorically speaking. I wanted to break his fingers. Instead, I smiled. I would love to. I handed my glass to Desmond. I picked up my clutch. I held it in my right hand. I took Elias's hand, and we walked onto the floor. He was a good dancer. I had taught him that too. Years ago at a fundraiser in D.C., when he was just a clumsy analyst in a cheap suit. We moved into the crowd. I pulled him close, closer than was polite. Careful, Magdalena, he whispered in my ear. People will talk. Let them talk, I said. I pressed the clutch against the small of his back. Through the fabric of his jacket, I could feel the hard rectangle of his phone. 1,000. 2, 1,000. Where is Hugo? I asked. He spun me around. The world blurred. Hugo is fine, he said. He is watching the fireworks from his window. He is very proud of you, by the way. He told me you would come. You are a monster, Elias. No, Magdalena. I am just efficient. You hoarded the truth for 40 years. You used it to buy olive groves and peace of mind. I am just redistributing the wealth. 10, 1,000. 11, 1,000. I kept the clutch pressed against him. The little light on the side was blinking blue. It needed to turn solid green. You are going to crash the economy, I said. You are going to hurt innocent people. Innocent people are already hurting, he said. The system is rigged, Magdalena. You know that. You helped rig it. I am just cutting the strings. He dipped me. It was dramatic. I saw the stars above us. For a second, I felt dizzy. 30 seconds. When we came back up, I stepped in closer. I rested my head on his shoulder. I have a proposition for you, I whispered. Oh, he said. I am listening. Stop the leak, I said. Stop the algorithm. Give me back my son, and I will give you the one thing you don't have. And what is that? He asked. Legitimacy, I said. You have money, Elias. You have power. But you are still just a thief. You are still just the boy I fired. I can vouch for you. I can introduce you to the old guard, the people who really run the world, the people who don't have Facebook accounts. He laughed. It was a cold sound against my ear. You think I want their approval? He asked. Magdalena, you are living in the past. I don't want to join their club. I want to buy their clubhouse and evict them. 50 seconds. He started to pull away. The song was ending. I tightened my grip on his shoulder. I needed 10 more seconds. Wait, I said. There is one more thing. What? He asked. He looked bored now. I looked him in the eye. You forgot to tie your shoe. He looked down instinctively. It was a stupid trick, a childish trick, but it worked. He paused for just a moment. I pressed the clutch hard against his jacket. 58, 59, 60. The light on the clutch turned solid green. I let him go. He straightened up and looked at me with a confused expression. My shoes are fine, he said. My mistake, I said. My eyes aren't what they used to be. I stepped back. The music stopped. There was polite applause. Thank you for the dance, Elias, I said. It was educational. He looked at me, suspiciously. He patted his pocket, checking for his phone. It was still there. He relaxed. Enjoy the party, Magdalena, he said. Midnight is approaching. You won't want to miss the fireworks. I turned and walked away. I didn't run. I walked with the slow, deliberate pace of a woman who has seen enough champagne and caviar to last a lifetime. I found Desmond by the bar. He looked pale. Did you get it? He whispered. I opened the clutch. The little green light was glowing steady and true. I got it, I said. We walked toward the exit. We didn't wait for the tram. We walked down the long, winding path toward the parking lot. My heels clicked on the stone. When we got into the car, I handed the clutch to Desmond. He plugged it into his tablet. He watched the screen. A progress bar filled up. Decryption complete, he said. We are in. I have a mirror image of his phone. Can you see the location of the key? I asked. Desmond scrolled. Yes, the app is active. It is geolocated to the Getty. But look here. He pointed to a text message thread. It was a conversation between Elias and a contact named the Nightingale. Who is the Nightingale? I asked. Desmond read the message. The package is secure. The boy is being moved to the secondary location. The auction for the Rossi Ledger goes live at midnight. Auction, I said. He lied to me again. He isn't just releasing it. He is selling the exclusive rights to the highest bidder before the public release. And look at the location of the secondary safe house, Desmond said. He zoomed in on the map. It wasn't a hotel in San Francisco. It was a warehouse in the port of Los Angeles. He has Hugo in a shipping container, I whispered. My hand flew to my mouth. Desmond started the car. We have 2 hours until midnight, Magdalena. Drive, I said. Drive fast. But wait, Desmond said. Look at the last message from the Nightingale. I looked. It was a photo of a person. It wasn't Hugo. It was a woman. She was older. She had silver hair and she was wearing a gardening apron. It was a photo of me taken yesterday in my olive grove. The caption read, "The weak link has been identified. Proceed with phase 2. They weren't just watching me, I realized. They were hunting me. And the person who took that photo wasn't Elias." Who took it? I asked. Desmond looked at me. His eyes were wide. The metadata says the photo was taken from inside your house, Magdalena. A cold shiver went through me. Someone was in my house. Someone I trusted. Or someone I didn't know was there. The Nightingale isn't just a funder, Desmond said. The Nightingale is the spy. We sped down the hill, leaving the White Castle of the Getty behind us. The party was just getting started, but the real dance had just begun. The port of Los Angeles, at night, is a city built for giants. Stacks of shipping containers tower into the black sky, like rusty skyscrapers. The air tastes of diesel and salt, and the rotting smell of seaweed clinging to the pilings. It is a place where things go to disappear. Stolen cars, illegal weapons, and apparently, wayward sons. Desmond drove the gray sedan through the labyrinth of metal boxes. The cloned phone was our passport. Every time we hit a security checkpoint or a locked gate, Desmond flashed a digital QR code from Elias's mirrored device, and the barriers lifted. It was too easy. It felt like walking into a trap, but we had no choice. It was 11 o'clock. We had 1 hour before the data dump. 1 hour to get Hugo and get out. Stop here, I said. Desmond killed the headlights. We rolled to a stop in the shadow of a massive crane that looked like a prehistoric bird. According to the geolocation, this was the spot. Warehouse 4B. It was a corrugated metal shed sitting on the edge of the dark water. There were no guards outside, no cameras that I could see, just a single light bulb buzzing over a steel door. Stay. In the car, I told Desmond, keep the engine running. If you see anyone coming, you honk the horn. Once. He looked at me with worried eyes. Magdalena, you can't go in there alone. We don't know who is inside. I checked the weight of the small pistol in my coat pocket. It was a Beretta Tomcat I had taken from the safe in my house before we left. I hated guns. They were clumsy tools for people who couldn't use their words. But tonight, I wasn't in the mood for conversation. I am not alone, I said. I have my anger. That is company enough. I slipped out of the car and moved toward the warehouse. I stuck to the shadows. My velvet dress was ruined. The hem was dragging in oil and dirt. My heels made no sound on the concrete because I had taken them off and left them in the car. I walked barefoot. It was better for balance, better for silence. I reached the steel door. It was locked. I didn't pick it. I didn't have time. I went around the side and found a window that had been painted over. The glass was cracked. I used the butt of the gun to clear the jagged shards and climbed through. I landed on a concrete floor in the dark. The warehouse smelled of sawdust and old coffee. I stood up and let my eyes adjust. There was a light coming from a small office elevated on a catwalk at the far end of the building. I could hear music. Not ominous music. It was pop music, upbeat and cheerful. I moved toward the stairs. I climbed them slowly, testing each metal step for squeaks. I reached the landing. The door to the office was ajar. I peered inside. I expected to see my son tied to a chair. I expected to see him bruised and bleeding. I expected to see guards with assault rifles standing over him. What I saw stopped my heart cold. Hugo was sitting on a leather sofa. He was wearing a plush bathrobe. He was holding a slice of pepperoni pizza in one hand and a game controller in the other. He was playing a video game on a massive flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. There was a bottle of expensive whiskey on the table. He wasn't a prisoner. He was a guest. I pushed the door open. It swung wide and hit the wall with a bang. Hugo jumped. He dropped the controller. He spun around and saw me standing there barefoot and disheveled with a gun in my hand. "Mom," he squeaked. I didn't say anything. I couldn't speak. The rage was a physical thing in my throat. It felt like a stone. "Jesus." "Mom, put the gun down," Hugo said. He scrambled back on the sofa. "You look crazy." I walked into the room. I looked at the pizza. I looked at the whiskey. I looked at the open suitcase on the floor. It was full of cash. Stacks of $100 bills wrapped in bank bands. "You aren't kidnapped," I whispered. Hugo looked at the suitcase and then back at me. His face crumpled. It wasn't the face of a man. It was the face of a guilty child who had been caught with his hand in the jar. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered. "I mean, it is, but it's complicated," Elias said. Elias said what I interrupted. My voice was rising now. "Did he say it was okay to sell your mother's life for a suitcase of money? Did he say it was fine to destroy 40 years of my work so you could buy a new sports car?" "No." "Mom, listen," Hugo said, standing up. He held his hands out. "I had to pay them back. The guys in Vegas, they were going to kill me. Elias offered me a way out. He said nobody would get hurt. He said the ledger was just old history. He said you wouldn't even notice it was gone." "I didn't notice," I screamed. I slammed my hand onto the table and the whiskey bottle rattled. "I am in the middle of a war, Hugo. I am being hunted. Desmond is risking his life. And you are sitting here eating pizza." Hugo flinched. "I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. But look at the money, Mom. There is $2 million there. We can go away. We can go to Fiji. We can start over." I looked at him, really looked at him. He was handsome. He had his father's eyes and my chin. But inside, he was hollow. Somewhere along the line, I had failed him. I had protected him too much. I had fixed too many of his mistakes. I had turned him into this. A man who thought consequences were things that happened to other people. The weak link. That was what the text message had said. The weak link has been identified. They weren't talking about me. They were talking about him. Elias knew Hugo was the crack in my armor. He knew that if he squeezed Hugo, I would bleed. "Get up," I said. Hugo blinked. "What?" "Get up," I said. "Put your shoes on. We are leaving." "Leaving?" he asked. "Where are we going?" "We are going to finish this," I said. "But the money," Hugo said, looking at the suitcase. "We can't leave the money." I looked at the cash. It was blood money. It was the price of my soul. "Leave it," I said. "Mom, are you crazy?" Hugo shouted. "It's $2 million. I raised the gun. I didn't point it at him. I pointed it at the suitcase. "Leave it, Hugo, or I swear to God I will put a bullet in it." He looked at me, and he saw that I wasn't bluffing. He saw the wolf. He scrambled to put his sneakers on. He was crying now. Soft, pathetic sobs. I grabbed him by the collar of his bathrobe. "Let's go." We marched out of the office and down the metal stairs. We walked back through the dark warehouse. I made him climb out the window first. I followed him. We ran across the asphalt to the car. Desmond saw us coming and unlocked the doors. We piled into the back seat. Desmond looked at Hugo in his bathrobe. "Is he okay?" Desmond asked. "He is fine," I said. My voice was ice. "Drive." Desmond punched the gas, and we sped away from the warehouse. We wove back through the maze of shipping containers. Hugo sat in the corner of the back seat, hugging his knees. He wouldn't look at me. "Where are we going?" Desmond asked. "It is 11:30, Magdalena. The dump happens in 30 minutes. I looked at the cloned phone in my hand. I looked at the text thread between Elias and the Nightingale. "We are going to the source," I said. "What source?" Desmond asked. "The Nightingale," I said. "I know where they are." "How?" Desmond asked. I pulled up the metadata on the photo again. The photo of me in my kitchen. I recognized the angle, I said. It was taken from the hill behind my property. There is only one house on that hill. It has been empty for years. But if someone bought it quietly, if someone set up a surveillance post, who owns the house on the hill? Desmond asked. I don't know, I said. But Elias is communicating with them, which means they are the key. If we can cut off the head, the snake will die. I looked at Hugo. Give me your phone, I said. He reached into his pocket and handed it to me. I rolled down the window. I threw the phone into the dark waters of the harbor. Hey, Hugo protested. Shut up, Hugo, I said. Just shut up. I turned to Desmond. Head north, I said. We are going to Big Sur. Big Sur, Desmond asked. That is 3 hours away. Not the way you drive, I said. And besides, we don't need to be there when the bomb goes off. We just need to be there to catch the person who lit the fuse. I looked out the window at the passing lights of the port. I felt a terrible calm settling over me. The time for fixing was over. The time for negotiation was done. Elias wanted to burn down the world. Fine, but he was going to learn that fire spreads. And I was bringing the torch to his front door. The port of Los Angeles at night is a city built for giants. Stacks of shipping containers tower into the black sky like rusty skyscrapers. The air tastes of diesel and salt and the rotting smell of seaweed clinging to the pilings. It is a place where things go to disappear. Stolen cars, illegal weapons, and apparently wayward sons. Desmond drove the gray sedan through the labyrinth of metal boxes. The cloned phone was our passport. Every time we hit a security checkpoint or a locked gate, Desmond flashed a digital QR code from Elias's mirrored device, and the barriers lifted. It was too easy. It felt like walking into a trap, but we had no choice. It was 11 o'clock. We had 1 hour before the data dump. 1 hour to get Hugo and get out. Stop here, I said. Desmond killed the headlights. We rolled to a stop in the shadow of a massive crane that looked like a prehistoric bird. According to the geolocation, this was the spot. Warehouse 4, B. It was a corrugated metal shed sitting on the edge of the dark water. There were no guards outside, no cameras that I could see, just a single light bulb buzzing over a steel door. Stay in the car, I told Desmond. Keep the engine running. If you see anyone coming, you honk the horn. Once. He looked at me with worried eyes. Magdalena, you can't go in there alone. We don't know who is inside. I checked the weight of the small pistol in my coat pocket. It was a Beretta Tomcat I had taken from the safe in my house before we left. I hated guns. They were clumsy tools for people who couldn't use their words. But tonight, I wasn't in the mood for conversation. "I am not alone," I said. "I have my anger. That is company enough." I slipped out of the car and moved toward the warehouse. I stuck to the shadows. My velvet dress was ruined. The hem was dragging in oil and dirt. My heels made no sound on the concrete because I had taken them off and left them in the car. I walked barefoot. It was better for balance, better for silence. I reached the steel door. It was locked. I didn't pick it. I didn't have time. I went around the side and found a window that had been painted over. The glass was cracked. I used the butt of the gun to clear the jagged shards and climbed through. I landed on a concrete floor in the dark. The warehouse smelled of sawdust and old coffee. I stood up and let my eyes adjust. There was a light coming from a small office elevated on a catwalk at the far end of the building. I could hear music. Not ominous music. It was pop music, upbeat and cheerful. I moved toward the stairs. I climbed them slowly, testing each metal step for squeaks. I reached the landing. The door to the office was ajar. I peered inside. I expected to see my son tied to a chair. I expected to see him bruised and bleeding. I expected to see guards with assault rifles standing over him. What I saw stopped my heart cold. Hugo was sitting on a leather sofa. He was wearing a plush bathrobe. He was holding a slice of pepperoni pizza in one hand and a game controller in the other. He was playing a video game on a massive flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. There was a bottle of expensive whiskey on the table. He wasn't a prisoner. He was a guest. I pushed the door open. It swung wide and hit the wall with a bang. Hugo jumped. He dropped the controller. He spun around and saw me standing there barefoot and disheveled with a gun in my hand. "Mom," he squeaked. I didn't say anything. I couldn't speak. The rage was a physical thing in my throat. It felt like a stone. "Jesus!" "Mom, put the gun down," Hugo said. He scrambled back on the sofa. "You look crazy." I walked into the room. I looked at the pizza. I looked at the whiskey. I looked at the open suitcase on the floor. It was full of cash. Stacks of $100 bills, wrapped in bank bands. "You aren't kidnapped," I whispered. Hugo looked at the suitcase and then back at me. His face crumpled. It wasn't the face of a man. It was the face of a guilty child who had been caught with his hand in the jar. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered. "I mean it is, but it's complicated," Elias said. Elias said what I interrupted. My voice was rising now. "Did he say it was okay to sell your mother's life for a suitcase of money? Did he say it was fine to destroy 40 years of my work so you could buy a new sports car?" "No, Mom, listen," Hugo said, standing up. He held his hands out. "I had to pay them back. The guys in Vegas. They were going to kill me." Elias offered me a way out. He said nobody would get hurt. He said the ledger was just old history. He said you wouldn't even notice it was gone. I didn't notice, I screamed. I slammed my hand onto the table and the whiskey bottle rattled. "I am in the middle of a war, Hugo. I am being hunted. Desmond is risking his life. And you are sitting here eating pizza." Hugo flinched. "I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. But look at the money, Mom. There is $2 million there. We can go away. We can go to Fiji. We can start over." I looked at him, really looked at him. He was handsome. He had his father's eyes and my chin. But inside, he was hollow. Somewhere along the line, I had failed him. I had protected him too much. I had fixed too many of his mistakes. I had turned him into this. A man who thought consequences were things that happened to other people. The weak link. That was what the text message had said. The weak link has been identified. They weren't talking about me. They were talking about him. Elias knew Hugo was the crack in my armor. He knew that if he squeezed Hugo, I would bleed. "Get up," I said. Hugo blinked. "What?" "Get up," I said. "Put your shoes on. We are leaving." "Leaving?" he asked. "Where are we going?" "We are going to finish this," I said. "But the money," Hugo said, looking at the suitcase. "We can't leave the money." I looked at the cash. It was blood money. It was the price of my soul. "Leave it," I said. "Mom, are you crazy?" Hugo shouted. "It's $2 million. I raised the gun. I didn't point it at him. I pointed it at the suitcase. "Leave it, Hugo, or I swear to God I will put a bullet in it." He looked at me and he saw that I wasn't bluffing. He saw the wolf. He scrambled to put his sneakers on. He was crying now. Soft, pathetic sobs. I grabbed him by the collar of his bathrobe. "Let's go." We marched out of the office and down the metal stairs. We walked back through the dark warehouse. I made him climb out the window first. I followed him. We ran across the asphalt to the car. Desmond saw us coming and unlocked the doors. We piled into the back seat. Desmond looked at Hugo in his bathrobe. "Is he okay?" Desmond asked. "He is fine," I said. My voice was ice. "Drive." Desmond punched the gas, and we sped away from the warehouse. We wove back through the maze of shipping containers. Hugo sat in the corner of the back seat, hugging his knees. He wouldn't look at me. "Where are we going?" Desmond asked. "It is 11:30, Magdalena. The dump happens in 30 minutes. I looked at the cloned phone in my hand. I looked at the text thread between Elias and the Nightingale. "We are going to the source," I said. "What source?" Desmond asked. "The Nightingale," I said. "I know where they are." "How?" Desmond asked. I pulled up the metadata on the photo again. The photo of me in my kitchen. I recognized the angle, I said. It was taken from the hill behind my property. There is only one house on that hill. It has been empty for years. But if someone bought it quietly, if someone set up a surveillance post, who owns the house on the hill? Desmond asked. I don't know, I said, but Elias is communicating with them, which means they are the key. If we can cut off the head, the snake will die. I looked at Hugo. Give me your phone, I said. He reached into his pocket and handed it to me. I rolled down the window. I threw the phone into the dark waters of the harbor. Hey, Hugo protested. Shut up, Hugo, I said. Just shut up. I turned to Desmond. Head north, I said. We are going to Big Sur. Big Sur? Desmond asked. That is 3 hours away. Not the way you drive, I said. And besides, we don't need to be there when the bomb goes off. We just need to be there to catch the person who lit the fuse. I looked out the window at the passing lights of the port. I felt a terrible calm settling over me. The time for fixing was over. The time for negotiation was done. Elias wanted to burn down the world. Fine, but he was going to learn that fire spreads. And I was bringing the torch to his front door. We didn't go straight to Big Sur because you don't drive into a war zone with a traitor in the back seat. You stop. You regroup. You interrogate. I directed Desmond to a cabin I own off the highway near San Luis Obispo. It is a small place, tucked into a grove of eucalyptus trees that smell like medicine and dust. I bought it 20 years ago under a shell company as a bolt hole for emergencies. I never thought the emergency would be my own flesh and blood. We pulled up the dirt driveway, and the headlights swept across the wooden porch. It looked abandoned, which was the point. We killed the engine. The silence that rushed back into the car was deafening. It was the silence of 3 people who knew that nothing would ever be the same again. "Get out," I said. We walked inside. The air was stale and cold. I flipped the breaker switch by the door, and a single yellow bulb flickered to life in the kitchen. It cast long shadows against the pine cabinets. "Sit down, Hugo," I said, pointing to a wooden chair. Hugo sat. He was still wearing the plush white bathrobe from the warehouse. He looked ridiculous, a clown in a tragedy. He pulled the robe tighter around himself, shivering in the unheated room. Desmond stood by the door, his arms crossed, leaning against the frame, like a silent sentry. I went to the sink and turned on the tap. The water sputtered brown, then ran clear. I filled a glass and drank it. I needed to wash the taste of failure out of my mouth. I turned around and leaned against the counter, staring at my son. "Why?" I asked. Just one word. Why? Hugo looked at his bare feet. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I told you, Mom," he mumbled. "The debt." "Don't lie to me, Hugo," I said, and my voice was quiet and dangerous. "I paid your debts. I always paid your debts. This wasn't about money. You could have asked me for money. You sold me out to Elias Thorne. You gave him the only thing that kept us safe." "Why?" Hugo looked up. His face was blotchy and red. "Because I wanted it to be over," he said. "What to be over?" I asked. "The shadow," he shouted. He stood up, but then he saw Desmond shift by the door, and he sat back down. "I wanted the shadow to be over. Do you know what it is like to be your son? Do you know what it is like to be the son of the great Magdalena Rossi? Everyone is afraid of you. Everyone respects you. And I am just the disappointment. I am just the screw-up who needs his mommy to bail him out." "So you decided to become a criminal?" I asked. "To prove you were a big man." "Elias treated me like a partner," Hugo said. "He didn't talk down to me. He said I was smart. He said I could be part of something huge. He said if I gave him the ledger, he would set me up for life, and I would never have to ask you for a dime again. I wanted to be free, Mom. I wanted to be free of you." The words hit me like physical blows. I had spent my life building a fortress to protect him, and he saw it as a prison. "You are a fool, Hugo," I said. "Elias played you like a cheap fiddle. He didn't respect you. He used you, and the moment you stopped being useful, he would have thrown you into the ocean." "He gave me the money," Hugo said defensively. $2 million. "Paper," I spat. "It was just paper, Hugo. He was going to crash the economy, remember? That money would have been worthless by morning." Hugo went silent. He slumped in the chair. The energy drained out of him, leaving only a scared middle-aged man in a stolen bathrobe. I looked at him, and I felt a wave of exhaustion. I wanted to hug him, and I wanted to slap him. I walked over to the table and sat down opposite him. "You gave him the book," I said. "The physical book." "Yes," Hugo whispered. "And the key?" I asked. "Yes." "And you told him about Zurich?" "Yes." I closed my eyes. It was total defeat. Elias had everything. But Hugo said. I opened my eyes. "But what?" Hugo bit his lip. He looked at Desmond, then back at me. He leaned forward and lowered his voice. I am not as stupid as you think I am, Mom. I know who Elias is. I know he is a shark. And you taught me that you never walk into a room with a shark unless you have a harpoon. I sat up straighter. What did you do, Hugo? I kept something he said. What did you keep? Hugo reached into the pocket of his bathrobe. He fumbled around for a moment. My heart started to hammer in my chest. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was yellowed with age. The edges were jagged where it had been ripped from a binding. He put it on the table and smoothed it out with his trembling hand. I tore it out before I gave him the book, Hugo said. I told him the binding was loose. He didn't check every page. He was too excited. I looked at the paper. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was mine, from 1999. It was the entry for December 31st, the very last entry in the book. Why this page? I asked. Why did you keep this one? Because it was the only name I didn't recognize, Hugo said. All the other names in the book were senators and CEOs and movie stars, but this one was different. There was no name, just a symbol and a location. I looked closer at the page. My own handwriting stared back at me like a ghost. Subject: the Nightingale. Location: Big Sur. Point Doom. Asset value: infinite. I felt a chill run down my spine. I remembered writing this. I remembered the night I met the Nightingale. It was a masquerade ball in Venice. I never saw their face. I only saw the power they wielded. They were the architect behind the curtain, the money behind the money. Elias doesn't know about this, Desmond asked, stepping forward to look at the page. No, Hugo said. He thinks he has the whole book. He doesn't know this page is missing. I looked at my son. For the first time tonight, I didn't see a failure. I saw a spark of the survival instinct I had tried so hard to breed into him. You kept insurance, I said. Hugo nodded weakly. I thought if he tried to double-cross me, I could trade it. I didn't know he was going to destroy the world, Mom. I just wanted leverage. I reached out and covered his hand with mine. His skin was cold. You did good, Hugo, I said softly. It was a terrible, dangerous, stupid thing you did. But this was smart. He looked at me with wet eyes. Can we fix it? He asked. I picked up the page. I held it up to the light. This is the address, I said. The Nightingale isn't just a person. It is a place, a fortress in Big Sur. That is where the servers are. That is where Elias is sending the data. If we can get there, if we can physically sever the connection, we can stop the broadcast. But Elias will be there, Desmond said. If he is leaving the Getty, he is heading to the source to watch the fireworks. I stood up. I folded the page and put it in my bra. Good, I said. I want him to be there. I want him to see me coming. I looked at Hugo. Go to the bathroom, I said. There are some old clothes in the closet, my husband's old hunting gear. Put them on. You can't fight a war in a bathrobe. You are taking me with you, Hugo asked, his eyes wide. I am not leaving you out of my sight again, I said. You started this, Hugo. You are going to help me finish it. He stood up. He looked taller somehow. He nodded. Okay, Mom. He walked down the hall to the bedroom. I turned to Desmond. He was smiling grimly. The Nightingale, he said. I always thought that was a myth. A boogeyman you invented to scare junior agents. It is real, Desmond, I said. And it is the only thing Elias is afraid of. He needs the Nightingale's infrastructure to run his algorithm. Without it, he is just a man with a stolen book. Desmond checked his watch. "It is midnight," he said. "The dump has started." I looked out the window at the dark trees. Somewhere out there in the digital ether, secrets were being spilled. Lives were being ruined. The chaos was beginning. "Let it start," I said. "We have 3 hours to drive to Big Sur. By the time the sun comes up, we will either be dead or we will be the only ones left standing. Check the weapons, Desmond." He opened the duffel bag on the table. He pulled out 2 more pistols and a flare gun. "Not much of an arsenal," he said. "It will have to do," I said. Hugo came back into the room. He was wearing an oversized flannel shirt and canvas pants that were too short for him. He looked like a scarecrow. "I am ready," he said. I looked at my team, an old woman, an old journalist, and a gambler in ill-fitting clothes. We looked ridiculous. But as I walked out the door and felt the cold night air on my face, I knew one thing for certain. Underestimate us at your peril. "To the car," I said. "We have a bird to catch. Highway 1 is a ribbon of asphalt draped over the edge of the world. To the left is the mountain, and to the right is a 1,000-foot drop into the black, churning water of the Pacific. In the daylight, it is majestic, but at 2 a.m, in a driving rainstorm, it is a suicide run." Desmond was driving with his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The windshield wipers were fighting a losing battle against the deluge. The gray sedan slid on the wet corners, and every time the tires lost traction, I felt my heart slam against my ribs. Hugo was in the back seat. He had stopped crying. Now he was just staring out the window at the darkness. He looked like a ghost in his father's oversized flannel shirt. "Turn on the radio," I said. "I want to hear it." Desmond glanced at me. "Are you sure, Magdalena? It won't be pretty." "Do it," I said. He reached over and pressed the button. The cabin was filled with the static of the storm, and then a voice cut through. It was a news anchor, but the professional calm was gone. There was panic in the tone. "Trading has been suspended on the Tokyo and Hong Kong exchanges following the release of what is being called the greatest data breach in history. The documents appear to implicate major pharmaceutical companies in a price-fixing scandal that dates back decades. But that isn't all. Reports are coming in of massive sell-offs in the defense sector. The algorithm seems to be targeting infrastructure now. The power grid in the Northeast is reporting irregularities." "Turn it off," Desmond said. He reached for the dial. "Leave it," I snapped. The voice continued. "Authorities are urging calm, but social media is in a frenzy. The hashtag, the cleansing, is trending worldwide. A manifesto released alongside the data claims this is just the beginning. The source of the leak remains unknown, but cybersecurity experts say the sophistication of the attack suggests a state actor or a rogue AI. Desmond turned it off. The silence was heavier than the noise. "It is happening," I whispered. "He is doing it. He is actually doing it." "We have to hurry," Hugo said from the back seat. His voice was small. I pulled the missing page from my bra. I turned on the map light. The yellow beam illuminated the handwritten scrawl. Subject, the Nightingale. Location, Big Sur. Point doom. Asset value, infinite. "Who is he?" Desmond asked. "You never told me about the night you met him." I stared at the paper. I let my mind drift back to 1999. Venice. The masquerade ball at the Palazzo Pisani. "I don't know his name," I said. "I never knew his name. I only knew his mask. It was a bird. A nightingale made of black feathers and diamonds. He sat in a corner and people came to him. Kings, presidents, tech moguls. They knelt before him like he was the Pope." "Why?" Desmond asked. What did he have? He had the keys, I said. He was a cryptographer, a mathematician. He wrote the encryption codes for the SWIFT banking system. He wrote the security protocols for the nuclear launch sites. He built the digital locks that keep the world safe. And he kept a back door for himself. Desmond whistled low. So Elias isn't just using his servers. He is using his master key. If Elias has access to the Nightingale system, I said, then he doesn't just have my ledger. He has the ability to rewrite reality. He can zero out bank accounts. He can erase identities. He can turn off the lights in every city in America. That is why he needs the physical location, Hugo said. The hardware. Exactly, I said. The Nightingale is paranoid. He doesn't trust the cloud. He keeps his core system offline, hardwired into a bunker. If we want to stop Elias, we have to physically cut the cable. We rounded a sharp bend, and the headlights washed over a sign. Big Sur, 10 miles. The rain was easing up, but the fog was rolling in. The marine layer. It was thick and white like cotton wool. It swallowed the car. Slow down, I told Desmond. The turnoff is unmarked. It is a dirt road near a mile marker I haven't seen in 20 years. We crept along the highway. I watched the odometer. My memory was a map of scars and landmarks. I was looking for a specific tree, a cypress that had been struck by lightning. There, I said, pointing. The dead tree. Turn left. Desmond cranked the wheel. We left the pavement and hit gravel. The car bounced violently. We were climbing now, up a steep, narrow track that wound through the redwood forest. The trees were ancient giants looming out of the fog. We drove for 10 minutes, then the road ended. It didn't end at a house. It ended at a gate. It was 12 feet high. Solid steel, topped with razor wire and cameras. There was no keypad, no intercom, just a black monolith blocking the path. Desmond stopped the car. Well, this is inviting, he said. I opened the door and stepped out into the mud. The air here was cold and smelled of pine needles and ozone. I walked up to the gate. I looked for a lock. There was none. It is magnetic, I said, controlled from the inside. How do we get in? Hugo asked, joining me. He was shivering again. We don't, I said. We are not getting in through the front door. The Nightingale built this place to withstand a nuclear blast. The front door is a distraction. I looked into the dark woods surrounding the fence. There is always a drain, I said. What? Desmond asked. A drainage pipe, I said. A ventilation shaft. Something. Even a bunker needs to breathe. When I was here 20 years ago to deliver a payment, I saw a maintenance crew working on the North Ridge. We left the car. We walked into the forest. The ground was slippery with wet needles. We used the flashlights on our phones, keeping them pointed low. We circled the perimeter of the fence. It went on for miles. Finally, we found it. A concrete culvert jutting out of the hillside. It was covered by a heavy iron grate. Water was trickling out of it. This is it, I said. Desmond pulled on the grate. It didn't budge. Locked, he grunted, and rusted shut. I looked at the grate. The lock was an old padlock, a master lock. Heavy duty, but simple. Give me the tire iron, I said to Hugo. He ran back to the car and returned with the heavy steel bar. I wedged the tip of the iron into the shackle of the lock. I braced my foot against the concrete. Leverage, I said. It is all about leverage. I pushed. My shoulder burned. The metal groaned. I thought about Elias. I thought about him sitting in this bunker drinking wine while the world burned. I pushed harder. I channeled 40 years of rage into my arms. The lock snapped with a loud crack. Desmond pulled the grate open. It screeched on its hinges. The tunnel behind it was dark and round, and barely big enough for a person to crawl through. It smelled of rot and damp earth. "Ladies first," Desmond said. I didn't hesitate. I hiked up my ruined velvet dress. I took the flashlight. "Stay close," I said, "and be quiet. If the sensors pick us up, we are dead before we clear the pipe." I crawled into the darkness. The concrete was cold and slimy against my knees. I could hear Hugo breathing hard behind me. We crawled for what felt like an hour. The pipe angled upward. My back ached. My hands were scraped and bleeding. Finally, I saw light ahead, a faint grill of yellow light. I stopped. I turned off my flashlight. I crept forward until I was looking through a vent. I was looking down into a room. It was a server room, but not like the one in Silicon Valley. This was a cathedral. The walls were rock. The ceiling was high, and in the center stood a massive supercomputer bathed in blue light. It looked like the monolith from 2001, A Space Odyssey. And standing in front of it was Elias. He was still wearing his white tuxedo jacket. He was holding a tablet. He was laughing. And sitting in a wheelchair facing the screen was a man. He was old, incredibly old. His skin was like parchment. He was hooked up to an IV drip. The Nightingale. Elias walked around the wheelchair. He patted the old man on the shoulder. "It is beautiful, isn't it, Soren?" he said. His voice echoed in the cavern. "The symmetry of it. We are rewriting history." The old man didn't move. He didn't speak. "Is he dead?" Hugo whispered behind me. "No," I said softly. "He isn't dead. He is a prisoner." I looked at the layout of the room. There were 2 guards by the main door. They were heavily armed. Assault rifles, body armor. We had 3 pistols and a flare gun. I looked at the vent cover. It was screwed in from the inside. Desmond whispered, "How do we drop?" "We don't drop," I said. "We create a diversion." I looked at the flare gun in Desmond's belt. "Give me that," I whispered. He handed it to me. I aimed through the slats of the vent. I wasn't aiming at the guards. I wasn't aiming at Elias. I was aiming at the halon fire suppression system sensor on the far wall. If I hit that sensor, the room would flood with inert gas. It would suck the oxygen out of the air to protect the computers. It would create chaos. "Are you ready?" I asked. Desmond nodded. He pulled out his pistol. Hugo pulled out his. His hand was shaking, but he held it steady. I took a deep breath. "Happy New Year." "Elias," I whispered. I pulled the trigger. The sound of a flare gun firing in a confined space is not a pop. It is a thunderclap. The red phosphorus streak screamed across the darkness of the cathedral chamber and slammed directly into the white plastic box of the thermal sensor. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the room convulsed. Klaxons began to wail, a rhythmic ear-splitting whoop, whoop, whoop that vibrated in your teeth. The overhead emergency lights flashed strobing red and orange, making the room look like a fractured disco from hell. And then came the sound I was banking on. The violent pressurized hiss of the fire suppression system discharging. Halon gas does not smell like smoke. It smells like ozone and dry ice. It is heavier than air, and it is designed to do one thing: starve a fire of oxygen. Unfortunately, human beings also need oxygen. The 2 guards by the door panicked. They looked up at the ceiling where the white fog was descending in a heavy curtain. They were trained to shoot intruders, but they weren't trained to fight an invisible enemy that was trying to suffocate them. Now I shouted. I kicked the ventilation grate. It had been loosened by the humidity and age. It clattered to the floor 20 feet below. I jumped. I didn't think about my knees. I didn't think about my 68-year-old hips. I just thought about gravity and the element of surprise. I landed in a roll just like I had learned in a training camp in Virginia 40 years ago. The concrete floor was unforgiving. I felt something pop in my shoulder, but the adrenaline masked the pain. Desmond landed next to me with a heavy grunt. Hugo tumbled down, last landing in a heap of flannel and canvas. The guards spun around, coughing. They couldn't see us clearly through the strobing lights and the descending gas. "Drop it!" Desmond yelled. He fired 2 warning shots into the bank of servers. Sparks showered down. The guards didn't drop their weapons. They raised them. I didn't hesitate. I raised the Beretta and fired. I didn't aim to kill. I aimed for the kneecap of the guard on the left. He screamed and went down. The second guard turned his rifle toward me, but Hugo was there. My son, the gambler, who had never held a gun in his life, fired wildly. The bullet went wide and shattered a glass partition, but the noise was enough. The guard flinched. Desmond stepped forward and pistol whipped him. He went down hard. The room was ours. But Elias was gone. I spun around, scanning the cavern. The wheelchair was there. The old man was there. But the white tuxedo was missing. "He ran!" Desmond shouted, pointing to the heavy blast door on the far side of the room. It was closing, a massive slab of steel sliding on hydraulic rails. I ran toward it. I could see Elias's face through the narrowing gap. He was smiling, a terrified, manic smile. He waved at me. "Enjoy the tomb, Magdalena," he mouthed. The door slammed shut with a final metallic thud. The locking bolts engaged. Clank, clank, clank. We were trapped. The hissing of the gas stopped. The silence rushed back in, filled only by the wailing alarm. "Turn that damn thing off!" I yelled. Desmond ran to the main console. He typed furiously. The alarm cut out. The emergency lights stopped strobing and settled into a steady, ominous red glow. "Oxygen levels are dropping," Desmond said, checking the readout. "The system thinks there is a fire. It is pumping the nitrogen mix. We have maybe 20 minutes before we pass out." Hugo was hyperventilating. "We are going to die," he wheezed. "We are going to suffocate in a box." "Look under the console," I said. "Standard protocol for server farms. There should be masks." Hugo scrambled under the desk. He pulled out 3 yellow emergency rebreathers. He tossed them to us. We strapped them on. The air tasted stale and rubbery, but it was air. I walked over to the wheelchair. The nightingale looked even smaller up close. He was wrapped in a blanket. His eyes were open but glazed. He looked at me through the plastic mask I had strapped to my face. "Who are you?" he rasped. His voice was like dry leaves. "I am the cleanup crew," I said. I pulled the mask off his face for a second so he could hear me, then put it back. "Elias locked us in here," I said. The old man chuckled. A wheezing sound. "Of course he did. Elias doesn't share. He takes." Desmond was still at the console. "Magdalena, we have a problem." "Bigger than the lack of air?" I asked. "Much bigger," he said. Elias initiated a hard lockdown from the other side, but he didn't stop the upload. The algorithm is still running. It is at 85%. "Can you stop it?" I asked. "I am trying," Desmond said. "But the encryption is insane. It is quantum-level stuff. I need a key." I looked at the blast door. I could hear sounds from the other side. Drills. Heavy machinery. "They are coming back," Hugo said. He was standing by the door listening. "I hear them. They are trying to cut through. They realized they left the computer unguarded, I said. Elias panicked. He locked us in to kill us, but now he realizes he needs the terminal to finish the job if the remote link fails. So it is a siege, Desmond said. I looked around the room. We were in a concrete box with 2 unconscious guards, a dying genius, and a supercomputer that was destroying the world. And outside, an army of mercenaries was trying to break in. It was exactly my kind of party. Hugo, I said, strip the guards, weapons, ammo, vests, everything. Hugo nodded. He moved with a new frantic energy. He stripped the flak jackets off the groaning men. He gathered the assault rifles. Desmond said, "Keep typing. Don't stop until you find a kill switch." I walked over to the blast door. I put my hand on the cold steel. I could feel the vibration of a diamond-tipped drill biting into the metal. They would be through in 10 minutes. I need traps, I whispered to myself. I looked at the server racks. They were cooled by liquid nitrogen pipes. High pressure. Hugo, I called out. Bring me the toolkit from the maintenance wall. He brought it. I went to the pipes running along the ceiling above the blast door. I used a wrench to loosen the coupling. Just enough. A fine mist of freezing gas began to spray out. If they breach that door, I said, they are going to walk into a wall of cold that will freeze the firing pins of their rifles and the corneas of their eyes. I went to the floor. I poured the bottle of industrial lubricant I found in the kit across the entrance. Simple friction, I said. You can't shoot if you can't stand. I went back to the console. Desmond was sweating. I can't break it, he said. It is learning faster than I can hack. It is rewriting its own code, Magdalena. It is alive. I looked at the nightingale. He was watching us with amusement. You can't stop it, the old man whispered. I built it to be unstoppable. It is the perfect predator. You built a monster, I said. I built a mirror, he corrected. It just reflects what you feed it. Elias fed it greed. So it became greedy. How do we kill it? I asked. The old man coughed. He pointed a shaking finger at the floor. Beneath the console. The heart, he whispered. I looked under the console. There was a panel. I ripped it open. Inside was a bundle of fiber optic cables glowing with blue light. The hard line to the satellite uplink, the old man said. Cut the cord. Desmond looked at the cables. If we cut those, we brick the system. We lose the evidence. We lose everything. We save the world, I said. The sound of the drill got louder. A spark flew from the center of the blast door. They were through the first layer. Desmond stood up. He grabbed a fire axe from the wall. Do it, he said. I hesitated, not because I wanted to save the machine, but because I knew what would happen next. Once the upload stopped, Elias would have no reason to keep us alive. He would pour everything he had into this room. Hugo, I said, get behind the server rack. Keep your head down. I raised the axe. Wait. My phone buzzed. It was in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from Elias. Don't do it, Magdalena. If you cut that cable, I will vent the room. Not with halon, with nerve gas. I have it plumbed into the ventilation. You have 10 seconds. I stared at the screen. He is watching us, I said. He has cameras in here. I looked up. In the corner, a small black lens was tracking me. Desmond saw my face. What is it? He has nerve gas, I said. If we cut the cable, we die. Desmond lowered the axe. He is bluffing. I don't think so, I said. Elias doesn't bluff. He escalates. The drill whined. The door was glowing red hot in the center. We were checkmated. If we cut the cord, we died. If we didn't, the world burned. I looked at the nightingale. Is there another way? I asked. The old man closed his eyes. There is always another way, he whispered. But it requires a sacrifice. What sacrifice? I asked. The override code, the old man said. It is voice activated, but it is biometrically locked to my heartbeat. Your heartbeat? I asked. If my heart stops, the system purges, he said. It is a dead man's switch to protect the secrets. I stared at him. He was asking me to kill him. I can't do that, I said. You don't have to do anything, he said. I am already dying. Just help me along. Unplug the machine that is keeping me here. He pointed to the IV drip and the monitor beeping steadily beside his chair. I looked at the monitor. Beep, beep, beep. I looked at the blast door. The sparks were flying. I looked at the fiber optic cables pulsing with the destruction of the global economy. Desmond looked at me. Magdalena, he said warningly. This is murder. No, I said. It is mercy. I walked over to the machine. I put my hand on the plug. I looked at the camera in the corner. I looked right into the lens. Are you watching, Elias? I whispered. Watch this. I pulled the plug. The sound of a human life ending is not dramatic. It is just a cessation. The rhythmic beeping of the monitor stuttered once, twice, and then settled into a singular, high-pitched tone. It was a thin sound, like a silver wire stretching across the room. Soren, the man known as the Nightingale, exhaled one last time. His chest fell and did not rise again. I didn't look at Desmond. I didn't look at Hugo. I looked at the giant wall of screens. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. The upload bar hovered at 85%. The blue light of the servers hummed. I felt a cold knot of panic in my stomach. Had he lied? Was this just another trap? Then the screens went black. Not just dark, black. The kind of black that implies a void. Text began to scroll across the central monitor. White, jagged text. Biometric failure detected. Dead man protocol initiated. Purging cache. Deleting root directory. Goodbye. The hum of the servers changed pitch. It went from a hive of bees to a dying groan. The lights on the towers flickered and died. The fiber optic cables under the floor went dark. The upload didn't just stop. The data was being eaten. I let go of the plug. My hand was shaking. I tucked it behind my back. He is gone, I whispered, and he took the secrets with him. Suddenly, the speakers in the ceiling crackled to life. It wasn't the smooth, controlled voice of Elias Thorne anymore. It was a scream, a raw animal sound of frustration. No, you stupid old witch! Do you know what you have done? You just burned the Library of Alexandria! I looked up at the camera. I didn't smile. I just took out the trash, Elias, I said. Now come down here and face me. I am going to bury you in there, he shrieked. Vent the gas! Kill them all! We heard the pneumatic hiss of valves opening in the ceiling vents. Hugo cried out and covered his face with his mask. We braced ourselves for the nerve agent, but nothing came out. Just a puff of stale air. Desmond laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. The purge, he shouted. It wiped the building controls, too. The ventilation system is offline. He can't gas us. We were alive, but we weren't safe. The drilling at the blast door stopped abruptly. Then came a series of dull thuds. Charges. They were placing plastic explosives. Get down! I yelled. We dove behind the heavy metal server racks. Hugo curled into a ball. Desmond covered his head. I pressed my cheek against the cold steel floor. The explosion was deafening. It felt like the mountain itself had cracked open. Dust and concrete shrapnel rained down on the room. The blast door, twisted and smoking, fell inward with a crash that shook the fillings in my teeth. Then came the silence. The tactical silence of men moving in for the kill. They came through the smoke. 4 of them. Black tactical gear. Night vision goggles. They moved with the precision of machines. But machines don't look at the floor. The first man stepped onto the patch of concrete I had covered in industrial lubricant. His boot hit the oil and went out from under him as if he were on ice. He flailed, his rifle swinging wildly, and crashed onto his back. The second man tried to step over him, but he walked right into the mist of the leaking liquid nitrogen pipe. The gas was invisible in the smoke, but the cold was absolute. It hit his face and his weapon instantly. He screamed, a short, choked sound as the moisture in his throat froze. He dropped his gun, clutching at his eyes. "Now!" I yelled. I popped up from behind the server rack. The element of surprise is a force multiplier. They were expecting terrified civilians. They got a firing squad. Desmond fired his pistol. He hit the third man in the shoulder, spinning him around. Hugo fired blindly, the noise of his gun adding to the chaos. I aimed for the leader, the one who hadn't fallen. I didn't shoot him. I shot the fire extinguisher mounted on the wall next to his head. The canister exploded, blasting him with white foam and shrapnel. He went down, blinded and disoriented. It was over in 10 seconds. 4 men down, groaning, cursing, or unconscious. I stood up. My ears were ringing. My shoulder throbbed where I had landed earlier. I walked over to the leader. He was wiping foam from his face, trying to reach for his sidearm. I kicked the gun away. Then I stepped on his wrist. I put my weight on it. He grunted in pain. "Where is he?" I asked. The man looked up at me. He had a scar running through his eyebrow. He spat on the floor. "Go to hell, lady." I leaned down. I put the barrel of the Beretta against his knee. "I am already in hell," I said. "I just killed a man to save the world. Do you think I will hesitate to cripple you?" "Where is Elias?" The man looked in my eyes. He saw the truth there. He saw that the grandmother in the velvet dress had left the building, and something much older and colder had taken her place. "The roof," he wheezed. "The helipad. He has a bird incoming." 5 minutes. I stepped off his wrist. "Tie them up," I told Desmond. "Use the zip ties from the cable bundles." Hugo came out from behind the rack. He was pale, but he was standing. He looked at the bodies on the floor. "Did we win?" he asked. His voice trembled. I looked at the black screen of the dead computer. "We stopped the leak," I said. "But we haven't won." "Not yet." "Why?" Hugo asked. "The data is gone. The asset is destroyed." "Because men like Elias don't go to prison?" I said. "They go to non-extradition countries. They take their millions and they rebuild. If he gets on that helicopter, he vanishes. And for the rest of our lives, we will be looking over our shoulders." I checked the magazine of my pistol. 3 rounds left. "We have to catch him," I said. "How?" Desmond asked, tightening a zip tie around the mercenary's ankles. "The elevator is destroyed. The stairs are probably rigged." I looked at the ventilation shaft we had come through. It was too slow. Then I saw it, on the mercenary's belt. A radio and a keycard. I snatched the keycard. The service elevator, I said. It's on a separate circuit. Physical hydraulics. It doesn't need the computer. I ran to the back of the cavern. There was a heavy freight elevator used to bring the servers down. I swiped the blood-smeared card. The light turned green. The grate rattled open. "Get in," I said. We piled into the cage. I hit the button for the surface. The gears groaned, and we began to rise. Slowly. Agonizingly slowly. I watched the numbers on the wall painted in yellow. Level 4. Level 3. "Come on," I whispered. I checked my watch. 3 minutes until the chopper arrived. Hugo looked at me. "Mom," he said, "you look, He didn't finish the sentence. I knew how I looked. My dress was torn. My hair was wild. I had blood on my hands that wasn't mine. "I look like I'm working, Hugo," I said. The elevator shuddered to a halt at the surface level. The doors opened. We were not in the forest anymore. We were inside the main house, the fortress disguised as a luxury cabin. Rain was pounding against the floor-to-ceiling glass windows. Through the glass, I saw the patio, and beyond it, a helipad jutting out over the cliff edge. Lightning flashed, illuminating a figure standing in the rain. Elias. He was holding a briefcase. He was looking up at the sky where the rhythmic thumping of rotor blades was getting louder. "He thinks he made it," Desmond said. I stepped out of the elevator. The floor was marble. My bare feet made a slapping sound. "He forgot one thing," I said. "What?" Hugo asked. I didn't answer. I walked toward the glass doors. I unlocked them. The wind caught the door and ripped it from my hand, slamming it against the wall. The noise made Elias turn. He saw me. He didn't look scared anymore. He looked furious. He looked like a child whose toy had been broken. He reached into his jacket. He didn't pull out a phone this time. He pulled out a gun. A silver revolver. "Magdalena!" he screamed over the roar of the wind. I walked out into the storm. The rain soaked me instantly. It washed the blood off my hands. "It's over, Elias!" I shouted. "The data is gone. The Nightingale is dead. You have nothing to sell." He laughed, a manic, broken sound. "I have the money," he yelled, shaking the briefcase. "I have 50 million in bearer bonds. I can buy a new life. I can buy a new army." The helicopter swooped down from the clouds, a black shape with a searchlight that blinded us. It hovered over the pad, kicking up a hurricane of spray. He started to back toward it. He raised the gun, aiming at me. "Stay back," he screamed, "or I will kill you right here." I kept walking. I wasn't afraid of the gun. I knew Elias. He was a calculator. He wouldn't shoot me unless he had to. He wanted to escape. "You can't run from this," I yelled. "You crossed the line, Elias. You touched my family." He took another step back. He was at the edge of the pad. The helicopter door opened. A hand reached out to grab him. "Goodbye, teacher," he shouted. He turned to jump for the skid, but he slipped. Not on oil, not on ice. He slipped on the wet concrete of his own ambition. His expensive Italian loafers, smooth-soled and perfect for a boardroom, found no purchase on the rain-slicked helipad. His feet went out from under him. He flailed. The briefcase flew from his hand. It hit the ground and burst open. Thousands of pieces of paper, bonds, certificates, cash, exploded into the air. The rotor wash caught them. It was a blizzard of money. A green and white tornado swirling into the abyss. Elias scrambled on his hands and knees, trying to grab the papers. He was screaming. "My money! My money!" He lunged for a stack of bonds that was blowing toward the cliff edge. "Elias, no!" I screamed. He didn't listen. He reached out. His fingers brushed the paper. And then he went over. He didn't scream as he fell. He just disappeared into the fog and the dark water below. The helicopter pilot saw what happened. He didn't wait. He pulled pitch and banked away, disappearing back into the storm. I stood there, in the rain, alone. Desmond and Hugo ran up behind me. They stopped at the edge. We looked down. There was nothing but black water and crashing waves 500 feet below. Is he? Hugo started. I looked at the scattered papers dissolving in the puddles. He is gone, I said. We stood there for a long time. The adrenaline began to fade, leaving behind a cold, aching exhaustion. Desmond put his arm around my shoulders. He pulled me close. It's done, Magdalena. It's finally done. I leaned into him. I felt heavy. I felt old. I looked at Hugo. He was picking up a soggy bond from the ground. He looked at it for a moment, then crumpled it up and threw it over the cliff. Let's go home, Mom, he said. I nodded. Yes, I said, let's go home. But as we walked back toward the house, I looked back at the cliff one last time. In my business, you learn a hard lesson early on. Unless you see the body, the ghost can always come back. But for tonight, the ghost was gone, and I had an olive grove to tend to. The adrenaline that keeps you alive during a gunfight is a loan from the devil. It gives you strength and speed and clarity, but the interest rate is brutal. When the helicopter disappeared into the storm, the bill came due. My knees buckled. I sat down hard on the wet marble of the terrace. The rain was washing the blood from my dress and the fear from my skin. But it couldn't wash away the cold realization of what we had done. We just killed a man, Hugo whispered. He was staring at the dark edge of the cliff. We didn't kill him, I said. My voice sounded jagged. Gravity killed him. Greed killed him. We just refused to catch him. Desmond knelt beside me. He checked my eyes. He checked my pulse. We have to move, Magdalena, he said. That explosion in the bunker will have triggered seismic sensors. The fire department and the sheriff will be here in 20 minutes, probably less. If they find us here with 4 tied-up mercenaries and a dead body in a bunker, we are going to spend the rest of our lives in federal prison. I nodded. He was right. We were ghosts. We needed to disappear. Help me up, I said. Desmond pulled me to my feet. I leaned on him for a moment, smelling the wet wool of his coat and the gunpowder on his skin. It was a familiar scent. It smelled like the 80s. We need to go, Hugo said. He was already moving toward the elevator. No, I said. Not yet. Hugo stopped. Mom, are you insane? The police are coming. Elias is dead. The computer is fried. It is over. It is not over, I said. I pushed wet hair out of my face. Elias had the digital copy, I said, but he was a collector. He was sentimental. He wouldn't have destroyed the original. He would have kept it close. He would have wanted to touch it, to gloat over it. The ledger, Desmond said, realizing what I meant. If the police find that book, I said, then everything we did tonight is meaningless. The secrets will still come out. They will just come out in a courtroom instead of on the internet. We have to find it, I said. We ran back inside the house. It was a modernist glass box, cold and sterile. We tore through the rooms. We checked the master bedroom. Nothing. We checked the kitchen. Nothing. The study, Hugo shouted from down the hall. We ran to the study. It was a room dominated by a massive desk made of reclaimed driftwood. On the wall behind it was a safe. The door was open. Elias had been in a hurry. I walked over to the safe. Inside were empty shelves where the cash and bonds had been. But on the bottom shelf, wrapped in a soft velvet cloth, was a black notebook. I reached out and touched it. The leather was cracked and worn. I knew the texture of it better than I knew the back of my own hand. The Rossi Ledger. I pulled it out. It felt heavy, heavier than paper and ink should feel. It felt like holding a bomb. I opened it. I saw the handwriting, the dates, the names, the sins of a generation recorded in blue ink. I closed it and clutched it to my chest. "Got it," I said. Sirens. Desmond hissed. I listened. Over the sound of the rain, I heard the wail of approaching vehicles. They were coming up the mountain road. "We can't go back down the driveway," Hugo said. "We will run right into them." "The elevator," I said. "Back down to the bunker." We ran to the elevator. We rode it down into the earth. The smell of the explosion was stronger now, acrid smoke and burnt plastic. We stepped out into the ruined cathedral. The emergency lights were dying. The mercenaries were still groaning on the floor where we had tied them. I didn't look at them. I didn't look at the body of the nightingale in his wheelchair. We ran to the drainage pipe. The grate was still open. The tunnel was dark. "Go," I said. We crawled back through the mud and the slime. It was harder this time. My shoulder was screaming in pain. The book was jammed into the front of my dress, scraping against my skin. We spilled out into the wet forest. The rain had turned the ground into a swamp. We ran through the trees toward the car. We could see the flashing lights of the police cruisers through the foliage. They were at the front gate, cutting through the lock. We reached the gray sedan. Desmond fumbled with the keys. He dropped them in the mud. "Damn it," he swore. He fell to his knees, searching in the dark. "Desmond," I whispered. "Hurry." He found them. He scrambled up and unlocked the door. We piled in. Desmond started the engine. He didn't turn on the headlights. He reversed down the fire trail. We bounced and slid. We drove blind for a mile, using only the ambient light of the moon that was trying to break through the storm clouds. Only when we hit the main highway did he turn on the lights. We didn't speak for an hour. We just drove south, away from the smoke and the sirens and the cliff. I sat in the passenger seat holding the book. My hands were shaking, not from cold, from relief. Hugo was in the back seat. He was asleep. His head was resting against the glass. He looked young again. Desmond reached over and took my hand. "You did it, Magdalena," he said softly. I looked down at the book in my lap. "I didn't do it alone," I said. We drove through the night. The storm broke and the sun began to rise over the hills of Santa Barbara. It was a pale watercolor dawn, pink and gold. We pulled up the long gravel driveway to my olive grove. The house was exactly as I had left it. The olive trees were glistening with dew. The dogs were barking in the yard. It looked so normal, so peaceful. It was hard to believe that the world had almost ended while this house slept. We got out of the car. My legs were stiff. I was covered in mud and blood and grease. I walked into the house. I didn't go to the shower. I didn't go to the kitchen. I walked straight to the living room. There was a large stone fireplace. The ashes from yesterday's fire were cold. I knelt down. I began to stack kindling. I crumpled up old newspaper. Desmond and Hugo stood in the doorway watching me. "Do you want help?" Hugo asked. "No," I said. "I started this. I finish it." I struck a match. The flame flared yellow and bright. I touched it to the paper. The fire caught. It crackled. and popped. The kindling took the flame. I waited until the fire was hot, until the heat hit my face. Then I picked up the book. I looked at it one last time. I thought about the power inside it, the leverage, the insurance. For 40 years I had told myself I kept it for protection. But that was a lie. I kept it because I was afraid to be ordinary. I was afraid that without the secrets I was nobody. But I wasn't nobody. I was a mother. I was a friend. I was a survivor. I threw the book into the fire. It didn't burn immediately. The leather cover was thick. It curled and blackened. But then the pages caught. The blue ink turned to black smoke. The names of senators and movie stars and murderers curled up and floated up the chimney. I watched it burn until there was nothing left but ash. I stood up. I felt light. I felt like I could float. I turned to my son and my partner. "Coffee," I said. "I think we need coffee." Desmond smiled. He looked tired and old and beautiful. "I will make it," he said. Hugo walked over to me. He hesitated, then he hugged me. It was a fierce, desperate hug. "I am sorry, Mom," he whispered into my hair. "I know," I said. I hugged him back. I held him tight. "We are okay," I said. "We are okay." But as I looked over his shoulder at the empty space above the mantelpiece where I used to keep my awards, I knew that things would never be quite the same. The ghosts were gone, but the scars remained. And somewhere out there, in the deep dark ocean, Elias Thorne was waiting. Or maybe he wasn't. It didn't matter. Because the next time the past came knocking, I wouldn't need a book to fight it. I had my family, and that was enough. The problem with burning your past is that the smoke lingers. It gets into the curtains. It settles in your hair. You can smell it weeks later when the wind changes direction. It had been a month since the night at Big Sur. A month of questions. A month of lawyers. A month of looking out the window and waiting for the other shoe to drop. But the shoe never dropped. The official narrative, the one Desmond helped craft and leak to his old contacts at the Times, was clean. It was elegant. Elias Thorne, a disgraced tech mogul, had orchestrated a cyber attack on global financial markets from a remote bunker. In his hubris, he had triggered an explosion in his own server room while trying to destroy evidence. He was presumed dead, lost at sea during a desperate escape attempt. The Nightingale was listed as a collateral victim, a recluse who had been held hostage by a madman. As for Magdalena Rossi, the retired olive farmer, she was nowhere near the scene. She was home in Santa Barbara, asleep in her bed. The geolocation data on her phone confirmed it. Of course, nobody needed to know that her phone had been sitting on her nightstand while she was 400 miles away holding a gun to a mercenary's head. I stood on the porch of the main house watching the sunrise. The light was hitting the olive trees, turning the silver leaves into gold. It was harvest time, the most important time of the year. Down in the grove, I could see two figures moving between the rows. One was Desmond. He was wearing a straw hat and carrying a basket. He moved slowly, inspecting each branch with the critical eye of a journalist looking for a typo. He had moved into the guest cottage temporarily while the heat died down, but his toothbrush had migrated to my bathroom and his typewriter was currently cluttering up my dining table. He was writing a novel, a spy thriller. He said it was purely fiction. I told him if he used my real name, I would poison his tea. The other figure was Hugo. My son looked different. The pallor of the casino was gone, replaced by a sunburn that peeled on his nose. He had lost 10 pounds. He was wearing work boots and a t-shirt stained with dirt and oil. He was hauling a heavy crate of olives toward the press house. He wasn't whistling. He wasn't checking his phone. He was just working. I walked down the steps and through the tall grass to meet them. The air smelled of rosemary and the sharp, peppery scent of crushed olives. "Morning," I said. Hugo dropped the crate with a heavy thud. He wiped his forehead with the back of his glove. "Morning, Mom. We are going to hit quota today. The Arbequina trees are loaded." I looked at the olives. They were small, dark, and perfect. "Don't bruise them, Hugo," I said automatically. "You have to treat them like eggs." "I know, Mom," he said. He didn't roll his eyes. He didn't ask for money. He just picked up the crate again. I watched him walk away. "He is doing good," Desmond said, coming up beside me. He plucked a leaf from my shoulder. I nodded. "He is terrified," I said. "He knows that if he messes up this time, there is no safety net." "I burned the net." "It is good for him," Desmond said. "Fear is a great motivator. It keeps you honest." We walked toward the press house. The machinery was humming, a rhythmic, grinding sound that usually soothed me. But today, the noise made me think of the server room, the hum of the cooling fans, the sound of the drill cutting through the blast door. "Do you think he is dead?" I asked. Desmond didn't look at me. He looked at the horizon where the ocean met the sky. "They found the briefcase," he said. "Washed up near Monterey. It was empty. They found a shoe, Italian leather, size 10. "That doesn't mean anything," I said. "A shoe is just a prop." Elias was a master of props. Desmond stopped walking. He turned to face me. He took off his sunglasses. "Magdalena," he said gently. He fell 500 feet into a storm surge. Nobody survives that, not even Elias. "I want to believe you," I said. "Believe it," Desmond said. "He is gone. The ledger is ash. The algorithm is deleted. You won. Take the win, Maggie." He squeezed my hand and walked into the press house to help Hugo. I stayed outside. I walked to the edge of the property where the manicured grove met the wild chaparral. I looked at the dirt. I dug into my pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a USB drive. Black. Tiny. Before I burned the ledger, before I threw it into the fire, I had scanned one page. Just one. Not the whole book. Just the page with the account numbers for the offshore holding company that Elias used to pay his mercenaries. It wasn't blackmail. It was a pension fund. I looked at the drive. I could give it to the FBI. I could give it to Desmond for his book. Or I could bury it right here, next to the roots of my oldest tree. I knelt down in the dirt. I used my hands to dig a small hole. The earth was cool and damp. I dropped the drive in. I didn't bury it because I wanted to hide it. I buried it because I am a farmer. And a farmer knows that you always keep a seed for the next season. Just in case. I covered it up. I patted the dirt down. I stood up and brushed my hands on my apron. The wind picked up, blowing in from the ocean. It was a clean wind. It didn't smell of smoke anymore. I turned back to the house. I could hear Hugo laughing at something Desmond said. I could hear the press grinding the olives into oil. It was the sound of life. The sound of legacy. I wasn't Magdalena the fixer anymore. I wasn't the woman with the secrets. I was just Magdalena. And for the first time in 40 years, that was enough. I walked back toward the light and the noise of my family. The sun was warm on my back. The war was over. But I kept the Beretta in the nightstand, just to be safe. So that is my story. I would love to hear what you think. Here is a question for you. If you held a book that contained the darkest secrets of the most powerful people in the world, would you burn it to save your family, or would you use it to change the world? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and if you believe that justice is a dish best served cold, preferably with a glass of good wine. Please subscribe to Silver Fox Legacy. We have many more stories to tell. Until next time.